one over here. Oh, do you wanna, it might be a little more comfortable. I mean, you can sit wherever you like. This is her. Okay. She's standing out there. She's down the hall. You want- Wow. I mean, her. Okay. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started, and if other people come, that's okay. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mimi, and my friend here, Stacy. We're from Children's Hospital, and we're gonna be doing the presentation Beyond Because I Said So. So we have our handouts here, and we're gonna just go over some things with you. I think we kind of did all the housekeeping already. Everybody picked up the papers that they needed to. Community education promotes health and safety for families. So not only do we do presentations out in the community with the families, we also go into schools and do things to promote healthy activities for kids. So what we're gonna do is, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a pediatric nurse. I've been a pediatric nurse over 20 years. And I started out at Cardinal Glennon on a step-down unit for 8 years. And then I came here to Children's. One of my jobs is I take call for pediatricians after hours. So when you call your doctor, then you may get one of the nurses and we talk to you to find out how best to take care of your child for the night. And then my other job is community education, where we just go out into the community and do fun events with kids and meet families and that kind of thing. And my other job, I sit and talk on the phone all the time, so it's nice getting out into the community and seeing everybody and being able to talk to everybody and see the kids. And Stacy?
My name is Stacy. I've been at Children's Hospital for almost 17 years also. I can't believe we started both at the same time. I started out in the development area, so fundraising for the hospital. And I've been in community education for the last 3 years. It's actually, to me, the best job there is. It's a lot of fun. Like she said, we get to meet families and kids, and that's a lot of fun. Personally, I have 5 kids, from 25 to 30, and I have 3 grandkids. So this is a topic that's near and dear, because I've been through this quite a bit, so we're glad you guys came.
I have 3 kids. I have a 25-year-old, 21-year-old, and a 12-year-old. So parenting has changed quite a bit over the years. So it's just interesting how things evolved. I wish I had something like this when I started out. But I'm still using it for my 12-year-old, so that's good. So what we're gonna do is kind of go around the room and kind of talk a little bit about your age of your kids, just so I have an idea of, you know, the ages we're kind of dealing with. When we talk about discipline, we're gonna kind of go over through all the ages and touch base on it, because sometimes you just have to incorporate it and kind of tweak it to the age of your child. So we're gonna get basic information, then we'll go over some scenarios also depending on a couple different ages, okay? Do we want to start over here?
Okay, I'm Deidre. I have a 25-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Okay, same situation. How about you?
4.5-year-old and a 5-month-old.
Okay.
2 9-year-olds, a
4-year-old, almost 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. 3, 4, 9.
I guess I'm just a grandparent here.
Oh, well,
so
that's
Not
good.
just.
My youngest is
That's good.
18.
Yeah, well, that's good. Soon it'll be grandkids maybe, right?
Excuse me?
Soon it'll be grandkids maybe.
Well, hopefully for her down there.
Oh, that's the only one,
First.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today.
I have a 5-year-old boy.
Okay.
I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
I'm just a 3.5-year-old.
I have 2 9-year-olds and a 5-year-old.
A 3-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old, and 11-year-old.
Oh,
Hands are full.
As well, definitely fun.
I have a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
okay.
We have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
I have an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, a set of twins that are 4, and a set of twins that are 2.
Wow.
11-year-old, 4-year-old, and 3-year-old.
We have a 14-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Okay.
I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
I have a 5-year-old.
I have a 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and 1 due in 3 weeks.
Oh, me? Oh. 3.5 and 1.5.
Okay.
4 and 2.
10, 8, and 4.
I have a 15, 14, and a 4. 5 and 14.
I have an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and 5-year-olds.
Okay.
I have a 4-year-old and 1-year-old.
9, 8, 3, 2, and 6 weeks.
All right, well, thanks. That's a broad range of kids and ages, so hopefully you'll find this a little bit helpful. Okay. So St. Louis Children's Hospital, we're ranked one of the top pediatric hospitals by Parents and U.S. News and World Report. Our physicians are affiliated with Washington University School of Medicine. And we tell you this not to brag, but just that the information you're getting today is relevant information. So, this we kind of went over already. If your name wasn't on the list, then we had you fill out a form. There was also, you got one of these blue pieces of paper. This is an evaluation. So we'd appreciate you filling this out because it's gonna help us with future presentations, whether it's what we can do to improve on, something you'd like to see in their presentation. You know, it can just help other families as well. And then this is a request form. And we didn't hand them out because not everybody may not need it, but they're gonna be up here if you wanna grab one after class, or if you want, us to pass it around, we can do that too. So, one of the things on here is a physician referral piece. And so that means if you're looking for a pediatrician, a specialist, then you can just fill this out and somebody will and we'll turn these in and somebody will call you directly about it and help you with that. The other information is pediatric health information. So this can be emailed to you. And actually in one of the bags, there's one of the hard copies of the information that you would get if you wanted to have that information. It's called Kids Today. It has articles about kids. In the middle here, we have a calendar of events, so things that children's offers and where. And you just call a number and register for classes. And it's just a lot of good information. It ranges for different age groups, have different articles for age groups. And it kind of tells us where our hospitals are on the back. So that, if you guys want something like that, then you can fill out one of these forms, just a half sheet, okay? And then we ended up putting these in the bags. It's just another quick discipline book, along with the information that we're gonna go over today, that you can probably find helpful, hopefully. So, what we're doing today, we have some objectives that we're gonna go over. And, basically understanding the difference between discipline and punishment. Understanding the goal of discipline and be able to take steps to establish it and really carry out what we're trying to do to discipline. And set rules in the house, and hopefully we will they will carry them out for us. So discipline versus punishment. So when you discipline, you're teaching. When your punishment is a penalty for doing something wrong. Okay, so there's definitely differences between these two. There could be physical punishment. It could be, you know, being rough with them, hitting, you know, and that's not gonna lead to positive things in your kids. If you do that, then they may take it out on other people as well. Also, something that isn't very, you may not see it on the outside, is verbal abuse. So, you know, punishments, putting down, talking down to them, belittling them, that kind of thing. So we don't want to do that either, okay? So our main goal is to discipline and as a positive and not as a punishment. So why do we want to discipline? Why do we want to discipline our kids? Well, we want happy kids, you know, who can adjust to life's changes. There's a lot of things in this world, you know, and if we don't parent them correctly, then they're not going to be able to handle these situations that come up in our world today. Also, when I'm giving you this information, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, or this is just hopefully beneficial information that you can take along with you, because everybody does parenting a little bit different. And there's a lot of different situations as well. So you may have mom or dad, you may just have dad, you may just have mom, you may have grandparents, you may have a combination of all those, an aunt, whatever it may be. So it just has to end up working for you. But we just want it to be more positive, so we can give you tools to do that, okay? More reasons. Teaching behavior that's acceptable to others. We want other people to like our kids, okay? I want to be around my kids, okay? If I don't raise them properly, then I'm not really going to want to hang out with them, okay? Or spend time with them. So, and it gives you a chance to instill the beliefs you have and your values into them as well. It teaches them self-discipline, right from wrong. And, you know, they need to learn these things so their lives aren't out of control. Because there's so many factors that are against kids these days that we need to, discipline's really important. And being a parent who disciplines is very important. So, again, having more quality time. You know, you want to spend time with your kids. I'm sure that, you know, you're out sometimes and you see these kids and you're thinking, gosh, you know, I wouldn't want my kids hanging out with them, much less I wouldn't want to hang out with them either, you know. So it's just something to think about. It takes a lot of work to discipline, and we're tired. We have a lot going on in our lives. We're juggling a lot of stuff, but it's important. So maybe what are some of the reasons why they misbehave? Well, lack of routine. Normal routine is disrupted. Kids like schedules. Okay, they may say they don't like schedules, but they really need schedules. You know, they need to know when it's time to eat. They need to know when it's time to sleep. You know, they have to get up at a certain time. You know, and not only are these important things to teach now as kids, it's going to only help them when they get older. Because if we're not instilling these things in them when they're younger, then they're not going to get up for work as an adult. They're not going to know responsibility to show up for your job on time. You know, that kind of thing. The reasons they're misbehaving, they might be tired, hungry, sick. You know, disruption of their schedule. They don't understand what you expect from them. Maybe there's too many things, too many rules, you know, or maybe they aren't at an age where they can understand the rules you're enforcing at this time, because you got to think developmentally how you're teaching them. So misbehaving is fun for kids. Maybe they get laughs from their schoolmates because they're not behaving in school, and they care about that more than, you know, doing what you want them to do. So temptation, you know, the temptation of, you know, acting up is more fun. So, you know, you can ignore or pull off a request and the parent might forget. So they might say, and try to enforce a rule. But if you're tired, and you don't really wanna do it today, but, you know, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, then they're not gonna have that consistency of, these are the rules, let's follow the rules. And it's really hard as parents, because we're tired. I mean, I'm tired. I don't know about you guys, but, so, and you just have to, you know, continue to be consistent with them when you put rules in place. And, you know, disciplining in public. Consequences need to be immediate. You know, if they're acting up in the store and they're younger, you can't take them out, let them go through the whole store, you know, doing all kinds of things. And then when they get home, then say, okay, because of that, we're gonna do this. It has to be something that you think about before you get into the situation. So maybe, you know, think, okay, we're gonna go shopping. What are we gonna do here if something happens? Are we gonna stop, drop everything and go out and take them out? You know, because it has to be something that they're gonna understand. If it's too late of a gap, then they're not gonna get that correlation. They'll test the limits, especially when they become older. You know, they think they're older. They can be more independent. You know, they think they're an adult. You know, when they're 16 and 17 and, you know. Some behavior disorders might come about, and then it's okay to get help for them. You know, you're not a failure if you need to seek help from other professionals. Okay, because we're all just trying to do the right thing for our children. So decisions strongly influenced by the way we were disciplined when we were growing up. And when you have different people raising a child, there's two sets of different ways people discipline. So maybe dad has a way of being disciplined what was stricter than what mom did. So their views of parenting are different. Generational. Sometimes the parents are working and the grandparents have to take care of the kids. So the way the grandparents were raised is a lot different than how they raised their kids. You know, there's a lot of generational things. So you just need to come to an agreement on how you want to parent and discipline. And if the kids are more with the grandparents and not the parents, then you guys, it's really hard because you gotta come to agreement of how you're gonna handle raising your child. Okay? So just things to think about. You gotta compromise with the other person. You know, maybe you are so gung-ho about one thing and they maybe don't see it as a big deal. Maybe having them clean their room isn't a big deal to keep their room clean. But when they're out in the main area, they need to put their dishes away or whatever it is. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that'll come up. But the main thing is, whoever you're parenting with, you have to have a united front. Because if you're not, the kids are gonna see, what can I get away with this person? What can I get away with this person? And then they're very manipulative, right? So they're gonna go to the person they're gonna get the right answers from. So, you know, I always tell my husband, we had the older two, and they're, you know, doing their own thing right now. And our 12-year-old daughter, she's a lot, but we're tired. We're older versus our oldest one. So I'm like, we have got to be united or she's going to eat us alive. You know, we got to be united and be together, and so that, you know, there's two of us and one of them, you know. So we're kind of going to go over some steps toward changing the behavior. But first off, instead of following right along this, I'm going to go over first the steps towards changing the behavior. Then I'm going to give you examples, okay? And then we'll go into more in depth on how to do these steps towards changing the behavior. Does that make sense? Any questions right now before we get started with this? Okay. So first off, our steps toward changing behavior, we want to log the behaviors that we want to see a change in our children. Okay? Then out of that list, we're going to choose behaviors from the log, because maybe you see 3, 4 things you'd like to change, but you can't focus on everything, right? So you just got to pick and choose maybe the top 2. And then, once you get those, then you can move down the list, okay? But you gotta stay focused on a couple things, or it's just gonna be too overwhelming for you as the parent as well as the child, okay? Establishing households, limits and rules, that's gonna come from what we decide to change, you gotta come up with those, okay? Determine the consequence for each identified behavior. So you see there's a pattern. You're starting, and then you're gonna keep going down the line to figure out what to do. Then you're gonna post the identified behavior and consequences so the child, so you and your child know. So not only is it up there for you, but it's up there for the child as well. And commit to follow through. And to carry those consequences out if they're doing the suggested behavior that you don't wanna see, okay? So, here, we're gonna do Billy first, okay? I'm gonna take you through Billy's day, then we'll go through Tim's, and then we'll go through Molly's, okay? So, Billy's a toddler, and at 6:30, Billy argues over what clothes he wants to wear, okay? He doesn't like what you picked out, okay? He wants to wear his own thing. Then 6:50, breakfast. There's a choice of battle because he doesn't want to eat what you put in front of him. 7:15, he won't put his jacket on so we can leave the house. 5:15, report of Billy scratching somebody at school, okay? And again, refusing to pick up his toys at school. We're gonna keep going through the day. 6 p.m., Billy has a temper tantrum because he wants to ride his bike instead of eating dinner or getting ready for dinner. 7:30, left toys in the living room. 8 o'clock, he's wound up after his bath. He doesn't want to calm down. He doesn't want to go to sleep. 8:30, he continues to call somebody to his room to come in and be with him after you've already put him in bed. So, with Billy, what do we see? Maybe that we like, well, let's do Tim, okay? Billy's the toddler, Tim's the second grader, okay? 6:30, Tim won't get out of bed. That could be any age. 6:40, battle of the choice of the clothes again, right? He's in second grade, he's getting older, he has more ideas, what he wants. 6:50, battle of the breakfast again. 7:15, he can't find his jacket, so then you're late leaving the house. Then he goes through his day, 5:15, you get a report from the teacher he hit somebody. Again. 6 p.m., he won't set the table for dinner, because now you're starting to teach responsibilities and chores, maybe, are in place. 7:30, he left toys in the hallway. He didn't pick them up before he went to bed. And again, this one's wound up from his bath and he doesn't want to stop running around the house because he's not done having fun. He doesn't want to go to sleep and miss out. 9 p.m., Tim continues to get up out of bed, ask for a glass of water, go to the bathroom. Kind of similar to Billy, only he's a little bit older. So it's going to be different kind of things we're looking at. Okay, Molly's the 7th grader. So Molly won't get out of bed. She left her cereal bowl and juice glass on the table again, so she's not clearing off the table. We're late because she didn't pack her backpack the night before. So now she's going to be late for school. 4 p.m., she didn't feed the dog before she met her friends after school, and that was a chore she should have completed. 6:30, she's late for 6 p.m. dinner. So she just disregards and doesn't show up when you know that's what time you told her to be home. 7 p.m., she snaps when you tell her to load the dishwasher because she didn't want to. She has other things to do. 8 o'clock, she left her bike in the backyard. She didn't put it away after she came back from her friend's house. 8:15, she left her assignment at school and had to call friends for instructions. How many times does that happen if you have an older one? Lots. 11 p.m., she left her towel on the bedroom floor. This sounds like my 7th grader. Oh my gosh, I'm just reliving this all every day. Oh. And her homework on the kitchen table. So, we got a lot of things we're going to focus on. So let's start with Billy, okay? Name some things that we need to work on with Billy. Anybody?
We need to develop a routine with him, like getting
Anything else with Billy that we need to focus on? He's hitting at school, yep. Yep. So with Billy, we're gonna start laying things out beforehand, and that's something we'll have to do for him at first, right, because he's little. And then hitting. Okay? What about Tim? He's in 2nd grade. What does he have to do? What do we have to work on with Tim?
It's kind of the same in some senses.
Yeah, and more so for Tim probably than Billy, because Tim's a little bit older and should understand about that, right? What about anything else with Tim? What do you think about Tim?
May I add for both, environment also.
Yeah, so explain that to me.
The environment pace, like, it was mentioned about routine, which is a big plus. And I'm just saying this out of experience, because over the years, as a co-parent, I evolved.
Right,
When it came with discipline, their environment, your environment with the co-parent, all that goes hand in hand.
yes,
And like, which is a very important thing, is routine, 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 routine. And as a kid myself too, you
Yeah.
know, and that way your parents was raising you
Yeah.
is very important, so.
right,
And what I've seen on all 3 of those, routine that plays a big part of it.
that's right,
The getting up
right,
late, you have to go ahead, maybe you may have to take the step, of course you would, to get them up just a little early,
right,
so they can go ahead and see, and they watches you all the time, so.
exactly, yeah, good. What about Molly? She's in 7th grade, a little older, she thinks she knows more, right, than you do. So, what do we need to work on with her? Routine for sure would work,
Also communication, like, that's very important, I think with all of them,
right,
too.
right. Now, she definitely understands, right, but, I mean, she needs to know that she can't just leave everything, because we're not gonna pick up after her all.
They need to learn respect too.
Right, yes,
Sense of laying out a sense of independence to go ahead, you know, sometimes
be in
you give her
charge,
space,
yeah,
and then you go, and again, it's very important the way you move around your household.
that's right, you're an example for sure,
The biggest example.
right, that's true. Do you ever have a time when you see your kid acting a certain way, you're like, what is wrong with you? They were watching you and you didn't know it, you know, that happens. All right, so, I'm gonna go back to this one. I know I'm jumping around, but I think it flows a little better if we kind of break it up like this, okay? So step 1, log behaviors of concern throughout the day. Concerns can be what the child does, hits his sister, or does not do, cooperate with the parent to get dressed, okay? Then, choosing behaviors from the log that you want to change. We kind of did that. We picked out, you know, hitting, not prepared, late for dinner, responsibilities, okay, not setting the table. And again, you're only picking a few, there could be a lot we can work with, right? But it's gonna only make you crazy and the child crazy if you try to do too much at one time. So little steps, baby steps, right? The third, steps toward changing behavior, establish household limits and rules. So you're picking out what you wanna change. Now you gotta establish those household limits and rules, and this is a hard one, okay? Because you're gonna have to follow through, right? You can't just say something if you're not really gonna do it. You gotta think about it, okay? And always with whoever is caring for the child. You know, you gotta be partners in this. Limits and rules need to be clear. They need to understand them for each age. So a toddler won't understand what a 2nd grader would, okay? 2nd grader might not understand what you're telling a 7th grader, okay? That kind of thing. It needs to be age appropriate, individualized for the child. Because you can have a 6 and 8-year-old, right? And they're similar in age, but they're two totally different kids. So what may work for one might not work for the other. So not only are you trying to, you know, set limits and rules, you gotta look at the personality that you're dealing with. You know, that's important. And again, be a role model, like you were saying. They watch everything you do, everything. even when you don't think they are. Try not to lecture, that's hard, I'm not good at that. So using a few words, you know, you don't have to keep going over the same point again and again and again and again, okay? Because then what are they gonna do? Tune you out, right? Yeah, I've already heard this before, I don't wanna hear it again, right? I need work on that. No yelling, that's not a good one for me either. I'll be yelling, it's not good, I'm not proud of it. So, you know, always things to work on, right? But again, if you're yelling at them, what are they gonna do? Yell back at you, right? So, even though you have things set, you may think through things, you have things set, you might find out it's not working like you want it to. So then you may have to rethink the rules and change them up a little bit, right? And as the child gets older, you're gonna do things different as well. So maybe always, instead of taking things away, maybe they can earn privileges instead. You know, it's just something you're gonna have to think about, okay? Make sure the child knows rules and the privileges have changed when you are to the point where they're getting older. And that is gonna change, so it has to be clear. Limit the rules, you know? You don't wanna be too restrictive, and you don't wanna have too few, or it really doesn't. What are you really gonna do? You know, are you really making a change? Okay? So, if there's too few rules, they might not understand what's expected of them. And if there's too many, well, forget it, I've already failed, right? That's how they're gonna look at it. So there's gotta be a medium ground here. And sometimes you have to think from the perspective of the child. So, step 4, determine the consequence for each identified behavior. So, something happens, there's always a consequence to their actions. Okay, they need to know the correlation between that. So, again, here we go back to both parents have to be on board with the plan. Whether you're not in the same household, whether they're with their grandparents during the day and you at night, it has to be consistent. And I hear from a lot of people when I do this talk, it's really hard because I want them to set rules and my parents don't enforce them. I mean, and it's hard for them too because they're the grandparents, they've raised their kids, so they want to be the fun one, you know? So it's gonna take a lot of give and take from each of you, you know, to come up with a good plan. And communication, it's just really important, communication, okay? The consequences should be appropriate to the behavior, okay? And for age specific. You know, if a toddler doesn't do something and you put them in timeout, are you gonna make them sit there for 10 minutes? What's the retention span? They don't get that, you know? And it's gonna be hard keeping them there. You know, you just have to think about it. The consequences should be immediate and matter to the child. And this gets to be what matters to your child. Because everybody, all of them are different, right? Maybe one child likes to watch TV, but another one doesn't. Maybe the other one wants to go outside. So you gotta find what works. The goal is to change the behavior that you don't like. The challenge is to find out what works for each child, okay? So consequences. It's all right to have different ones for different kids. You know, but of course they're gonna question, well, why does, you know, John get to do that and I don't get to do that? You know? This is the way we're gonna do things, you know? A younger child has shorter attention spans, so the timeout we talked about should be 1 minute per year of age. Okay, they can't. It doesn't need to be any longer than that. Natural consequences are effective. If he forgets his lunch, he's gonna be hungry. It's really hard, you know, because when they start going to school and they start forgetting things, you don't want them not to have lunch, right? Is he gonna get lunch at school? So, and what if they forget their assignment? And you rescue them each time. Are they gonna learn that they have to be responsible for themselves? I mean, they may not get a very good grade because of that, but, you know, sometimes you have to let them fail for them to understand what's going on. Loss of privilege. If you leave your bike out, you can't ride it for a day, okay? If you didn't do your chores, you can't talk on the phone to your friends, you know. If you don't show up in time when it's time for dinner, you're not gonna be spending time with those friends. It just has to, I mean, obviously we can't go through every scenario, but you get the idea. It has to equal the consequence. Okay? Step 4, timeout. So a cool down time for both of you. Without a lot of words, explaining to them, you know, why it is what it is. Why you put this into place. It should never be, when it's a timeout for them, it should never be a scary place. You know, where they're scared to be sitting somewhere. So, and again, this is individual. Like for my son, I could put him in his room for his timeout, but my daughter, I couldn't because she wanted to be with me. So her timeout was different than my son's. So I just had to find a way that she knew you're still not getting my attention, but she could see me. So it could be on the lap facing away, just so you're not giving them that direct attention. It just depends on what your child, you know, reacts to. Appropriate consequences for the misbehavior. If you see your child doesn't want to share a toy, put the toy up. So put the toy in a timeout. You know, and they can't play with that toy and for a certain amount of time. When you're returning the toy, then you explain to them they can have it back now, but why they've got to take it away to begin with. Because now it's up there and they can see it and they want it, but they can't have it. So then when you do give it back to them, then you're explaining why you took it away to begin with. Just reinforce it, okay? So these are kind of broken down into some behaviors that we picked out already. So the type of behavior is hitting. So the consequence, you intervene and tell the child, give them some other ways of relieving their anger instead of hitting somebody. Giving them a time out to think about it, or just to take some deep breaths and settle down a little bit, okay? Temper tantrums. Intervene with a timeout, okay? You're giving them space. Sometimes parents need a timeout, right? So we talked about leaving the toy, putting it away for a little bit. He won't set the table, a loss of a privilege, okay? Something that he really, 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 really wants to do. It's gotta be what's gonna be important to them. And sometimes it can be hard finding that, because all kids are different. Late for dinner, they can't go out to school. They can't go after school tomorrow to visit with their friends because they didn't do what they were supposed to that night. Okay, it's a consequence that they could see what they did and what's going to happen because of it. Left the bike in the yard, you can't have your bike. If you can't put it away, you're not responsible to put it away, then you can't use it. Not prepared for homework. He has to check his backpack with the teacher every day before leaving school. I did that with my daughter. She didn't like it at all. Okay? Because I talked to the teacher and said, I need to make sure she has everything in her backpack beforehand. And so she had to get it signed from the teacher. That was different. That doesn't happen anymore, but she didn't like it. So commit to following through with the consequence each time the behavior is exhibited. This is really hard, because we're tired, right? Some days it's easier than others, but you gotta be consistent, and you gotta be firm. If you lack being consistent, they're gonna get confused. They're gonna think they can take advantage of you, because you're not following through. So, you know, it's hard work. Parenting is hard work. So lack of consistency leads to the child pushing the limits again and again, until you just say, I'm too tired, do what you want to do, right? And then they win. So, but you know, sometimes that does happen, and we gotta get back on track, you know, because we're all human, and sometimes it's hard. So, consistency will help avoid bargaining and arguments, okay? If they're like, well, why won't you let me go? I promise I won't do it again. They're begging, I'm sorry, right? You heard that many times? If you're consistent and firm, there's not gonna be that wiggle room for them to bargain with you, okay? And some things are not as important as other things. You gotta pick your battles, right? You've heard that, you've lived it probably a lot of times. You know, you gotta pick out the most important things. You know, maybe, you know, somebody letting their kid wear whatever they want to school is fine. But deciding what they're gonna have for breakfast is not an option. You know, it just depends on your parenting style, what is important and what isn't. But it can't be everything, right? Because we have to let them feel like they have some choices sometimes. Fall back on the established rules and consequences so you can engage yourself and not take the blame. Okay, if you are being inconsistent, they're gonna call you out on it. If you're consistent, that can't happen, okay? Focus on the positive. Explain what the child can and will do instead of what they can't do. So clearly explain the behavior you expect rather than be good, okay? This was the deal, you know? Put your bike away and you can ride it. Clean your room and you can have a friend over. You know, whatever it is that you guys arrange, you gotta be consistent. Don't give choices if there's no choice. Okay, so it's time to go to bed. Are you gonna ask your child, do you wanna go to bed? No, because they're gonna say, no, I don't wanna go to bed. I wanna stay up. Okay, it's time to go to bed. You can pick 2 books that we can read, okay? They have a choice of picking the 2 books, but it's not a choice. You're going to bed, right? And maybe it's time to eat dinner. Do you want to eat dinner? No, not a choice. We're eating dinner. But if you're the type of people who let them have whatever they want for dinner, then you can say you can have this or this. What would you like? Right? So there's no choice in it's time for dinner, but there may be a choice of what they want for dinner. Choosing your battles. Praise for good behavior. Praise, praise, praise. And I found too, a lot of times when you're out with other people, telling them in front of them what you're proud of really goes a long way. You should try it if you've not done it. Because that's a motivator for them. They want to please you most of the time. Not all the time. A new plan might take time to work. Don't give up. You know, it is hard. It's a hard job to be a parent. So kind of going over all of them. Step 1, log the behaviors of concern throughout the day. Choose behaviors that you want to change. Establish household limits and rules. Determine the consequences for each behavior you identified. Post those so you both can see them. The behavior and the consequence if they don't do the desired behavior. Commit to following through with the consequence each time it happens. It's hard. It is hard. You know, some things you need to remember, keep in mind, which we've talked about already. Understanding growth and development, what can they understand? What are they capable of doing? Right? How old is a child when they can make their own bed? How old are they when they can empty the dishwasher? So you just have to think about it, what they're capable of doing. Unconditional love. Always make sure they know that you love them, but it's their behavior you don't like. So there's a distinction between that, okay? Discipline is teaching, not punishing. And setting limits helps a child make good choices when you're not there with them, okay? And it's only setting them up for successes as they get older. Okay, I have repeated conversations with my daughter. You know why we're doing this now? Because when you get older, da-da-da, we see something. You know, it's an example of, this is why we do this. This, you wonder why, this is why. You know? Make correlations when you can, so they understand. Children of all ages thrive on routine. We talked about that. You know, if bedtime's 7, another night it's 9, I can't tell you how many times in the last month my 12-year-old asked why she had to go to bed. And everybody else in her class never has to go to bed at a certain time. Sorry, I'm your parent, I'm not everybody else's parent. And she needs her sleep because she won't get up in the morning. So, it's okay to apologize for overreacting. Let them know that it's okay to make mistakes and own up to those mistakes. You know, everybody makes mistakes, even adults make mistakes. And I'm sorry that I yelled at you, okay, but you were not doing this, and I asked you to do it, okay? So let them know that it's okay, but take responsibility for it. Because if they don't see you taking responsibility, they're never going to learn that. Any questions? Any comments?
Yes, I think that you did on it. I think back to, up until my point, even when you were a child, how you were a parent, and up to now, I think this is a very good program. I'm glad that I got a chance to fall in on it.
Yeah, I wish I knew this when my older ones were little. But every time I do this presentation, I think of something else I could do with my home. It's always changing, which is pretty neat, you know.
And you hear from your kids, well, you didn't do us like that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You wanna hear it, you wanna hear it. I say that you was definitely spot on about there's difference in children and everything. And, I mean, you did spot on, and I like to go ahead and see a whole lot of this happen, a whole lot of times.
Parenting is hard, but it's work. But if you don't put in the work now, your kids might not be the way you want them to be. And you might want to not spend time with them.
Important to let them know why they are being disciplined.
Right.
The lecture part, that's a thing, whole discussion. Hey, look, this is why, not just because I said so.
Right.
Well, this is why you doing it, and this could lead to that. Drawing in contrast and different things, those things, I mean, speaking out of experience, those things, you know, help.
Yeah. Does anybody have any tips for any of us parenting that worked for you?
So my oldest, I keep going back to some of the things you're saying, but what I found worked with him is he was always the kid that wanted to know why. And to sit down and let him be a part of the process. You know what I mean? So if this happens, what's the consequence gonna be? What do you think is a reasonable, you know, consequence for what you did? So since he was a part of it, you talked about taking yourself out of the middle of it, well, you helped decide what these rules were. So this is what we're gonna, so for him, it took the why out of it, right? So when it happened, this is what we're gonna do.
And as a parent, you're gonna constantly be a salesperson. You have to have the kids buy into your program.
I
I'm
never,
not saying that you compromising, but you want them to see, you have to go ahead and sell it to them. Hey, this is
Right.
why.
I'll never forget my mom always saying, disciplining your kids was like a punishment for me as well. Because if you're not, like you said, if you're not consistent, you're gonna go from things. Yeah, consistency.
I have cried with my kids before, and why are you crying? I'm like, because I hate doing this, but you need to know that this is
Right.
the consequence. So we're still gonna do it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make me happy.
Right.
I don't know, my kids see me cry all the time, but it's.
But then it's real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's real.
And then they feel bad, they're like, okay, we won't do that again, we understand now.
Hey, crying, that's a good one. I'm gonna write that down, my daughter.
I bet you're 12-year-old, I don't know
My
if that's
daughter's
gonna work.
12, my daughter's 12, it's a rough age. Like, I was laughing when that was my daughter, Melissa right there,
Yeah.
everything.
Getting up for school, oh, not a good time. Try not to be on the camera. All right, hope you guys don't have any questions anymore. And you can talk to us afterwards while we're running up if you have come up with any. So just references and suggested rating.